The impossible shot rang out across the Austrian Alps at exactly 0847 hours, a single 9mm slower round from a standard-issue pistol, fired at 800 meters, finding its mark with surgical precision. The enemy sniper, who had pinned down Mountain Patrol Unit 7 for 3 hours, slumped forward, his rifle falling silent forever. What shocked Sergeant Hans Eagle Miller wasn't just the incredible marksmanship it was who had pulled the trigger. Clara Weiss, the 33-year-old woman his team mockingly called Pack Mule, calmly holstered her Glock 17 and adjusted the 40-pound supply pack strapped to her shoulders. For months, she'd endured their condescension, carrying water, medical equipment, and climbing ropes while they treated her like walking storage. They'd excluded her from tactical briefings, dismissed her mountain expertise as tourist information, and never suspected her true identity. But what happened next would shatter everything they thought they knew about the quiet woman who'd been protecting them all along. The revelation would transform not just their unit, but military protocol itself, proving that sometimes the most dangerous person on your team is the one carrying the medical supplies. The Austrian Alps in 2023 presented a unique theater of operations where NATO forces conducted joint training exercises near the Afghan border facility. The Ötztal Valley, with its narrow canyons and treacherous terrain, served as the perfect proving ground for mountain warfare specialists. Here, among peaks that had witnessed centuries of conflict, international units tested their mettle against both nature and simulated enemy forces. The crisp mountain air carried the weight of tradition. These were the same valleys where Austrian mountain troops had earned their legendary reputation during both world wars. Clara Weiss had grown up in these mountains, her childhood spent scaling the same cliffs that now served as training grounds. Her grandfather, a decorated Gebirgsjäger from World War II, had taught her to read wind patterns and calculate bullet trajectories before she could properly tie her boots. By 16, she was outshotting seasoned hunters. By 21, she'd earned her place in the Austrian Special Forces Alpine Sniper Division. Her military career from 2015 to 2019 had been nothing short of extraordinary. 3 deployments to Afghanistan, 14 confirmed kills at ranges exceeding 1,000 meters, and a reputation among NATO forces as one of Europe's most skilled marksmen. She'd pioneered techniques for extreme range shooting in mountain environments, accounting for altitude, temperature variations, and the unique ballistics challenges of high-elevation combat. Her service record included the successful elimination of high-value targets that had eluded other sniper teams for months. The budget cuts of 2019 had ended her career abruptly. Despite her exemplary service, the Austrian military downsized its special operations units, and Clara found herself discharged with full honors, but no clear path forward. The transition to civilian life proved impossible. How do you explain to potential employers that your greatest skill involves precision killing at impossible distances? When the opportunity arose to rejoin the military in a support role, she'd accepted without hesitation, content to serve in any capacity that kept her in the mountains she loved. The systematic degradation of Clara's treatment by Mountain Patrol Unit 7 represented more than simple military hazing. It embodied a fundamental failure to recognize and utilize available resources. Sergeant Muller's leadership style prioritized traditional gender roles over tactical effectiveness, creating dangerous blind spots in unit readiness. His dismissal of Clara's expertise wasn't just personal prejudice. It was a strategic vulnerability that left his team exposed to threats they couldn't identify or counter. The stakes extended beyond unit cohesion to operational security. In an environment where enemy forces actively sought to exploit NATO training exercises, every missed opportunity to leverage available skills could prove fatal. Clara's unique combination of local knowledge, advanced tactical training, and specialized marksmanship represented a force multiplier that Muller's leadership had rendered invisible through institutional bias. But fate had been positioning Clara for a moment when her hidden abilities would mean the difference between life and death for the men who dismissed her as mere cargo. The morning of October 15th began like any other patrol through the Utstal Valley. Intelligence reports suggested minimal enemy activity, making it an ideal training scenario for the six-man unit. Clara shouldered her standard 40-pound pack water purification tablets, emergency medical supplies, communications equipment, and climbing gear while the men divided tactical responsibilities among themselves. Muller's briefing excluded her entirely, treating her presence as a logistical necessity rather than a tactical asset. As they moved through the narrow canyon approaches, Clara's mountain-trained eyes caught details the others missed: the absence of wildlife sounds, subtle disturbances in loose rock formations, and the way morning shadows fell across potential sniper positions, all registered in her consciousness. She'd learned to read these mountains like a book, but her teammates had made it clear that her tourist information wasn't welcome in their tactical discussions. The patrol route took them through 3 kilometers of increasingly difficult terrain, with Clara assigned to rear guard officially for security, but actually to keep her out of the way. She used this position to conduct her own reconnaissance, mentally cataloging potential threats and escape routes that the official mission planning had overlooked. Her training had taught her to always assume enemy contact, regardless of intelligence assessments. While the men focused on their immediate objectives, Clara prepared for contingencies they hadn't considered. She positioned her gear for quick access to medical supplies, ensured her sidearm was properly zeroed for the altitude, and maintained constant awareness of wind patterns and visibility conditions. Her experience in Afghanistan had taught her that the most dangerous moments often came during routine operations when vigilance naturally decreased. The team's communication protocols excluded her from tactical networks, but Clara monitored their radio chatter, building her own situational awareness picture. She noted their ammunition loads, identified their individual strengths and weaknesses, and calculated fields of fire from various positions along their route. It was second nature, the kind of comprehensive threat assessment that had kept her alive through 3 combat deployments. The first 3 hours of the patrol proceeded without incident, reinforcing the team's confidence in their intelligence reports. Clara maintained her position, carrying her burden without complaint while staying alert for signs of trouble. Her teammates grew increasingly casual, joking among themselves and paying less attention to proper tactical spacing when they reached the narrow section of the canyon at approximately 0800 hours. Clara's instincts screamed warnings that she couldn't officially voice. The terrain created a perfect kill zone, high ground on both sides, limited escape routes, and excellent concealment for enemy positions. She tried to communicate her concerns to Muller, but he dismissed her with his usual condescension. Weiss, worry about the medical supplies. Leave the tactical thinking to actual soldiers. The enemy sniper's first shot came at 08:45 hours. The crack of a high-powered rifle echoing off canyon walls as Corporal Weber dropped behind cover. A bullet hole in his helmet. The team immediately went to ground, but their position was hopeless, pinned in a narrow corridor with an enemy marksman commanding the high ground at extreme range. But the reality of their situation was far more desperate than any training scenario could have prepared them for. The sniper's position, roughly 800 meters up the canyon wall, provided perfect fields of fire across the entire patrol route. Muller's team found themselves trapped in a textbook kill zone with no immediate options for escape or counterattack. The enemy marksman demonstrated professional competence, placing shots with calculated precision to maximize psychological pressure while conserving ammunition. Within the first 10 minutes, 3 more rounds impacted dangerously close to team members, each shot forcing them deeper into inadequate cover. The rocky terrain provided minimal protection, and any attempt to move resulted in immediate enemy fire. Clara watched from her position as the men who'd dismissed her expertise struggled with a tactical problem that required exactly the skills they'd refused to acknowledge. The sniper's strategy became clear as the engagement continued. He wasn't trying to eliminate the patrol immediately, but rather to pin them down until reinforcements could arrive. Intelligence reports had been wrong. This wasn't a training exercise interrupted by opportunistic enemy contact, but a deliberate ambush designed to capture or kill NATO personnel. The stakes had escalated far beyond routine patrol operations. Muller's increasingly desperate radio calls to headquarters painted a grim picture of their situation. The nearest sniper team was 4 hours away by helicopter, assuming weather conditions permitted extraction. Artillery support was impossible given their proximity to civilian areas, and airstrikes were prohibited in the training zone. The patrol was effectively on its own, facing a professional enemy marksman with superior position and unlimited time. Radio chatter revealed the broader implications of their predicament. Other NATO units in the area had been alerted to possible enemy infiltration, transforming routine training exercises into active combat operations. The political ramifications of NATO casualties during peacetime training would be severe, adding pressure for quick resolution while limiting available response options. Clara monitored these communications while maintaining her own tactical assessment. Her experience in Afghanistan had taught her to recognize the signatures of professional enemy snipers, the precise shot placement, the psychological timing, the strategic patience. This wasn't random harassment, but a calculated military operation executed by someone with advanced training and equipment. As the situation deteriorated, Clara found herself mentally shifting from support role to combat mode. The muscle memory of her sniper training reasserted itself, calculating wind speed, estimating range, identifying potential shooting positions. She began to see the tactical problem not as a victim trapped in a kill zone, but as a sniper presented with a target of opportunity. Her positioning with the supply packs had actually provided her with better cover than the men who'd rushed forward into the exposed sections of the canyon. From her rearguard position, she could observe the enemy sniper's location without being directly exposed to his field of fire. Years of mountain warfare training had taught her to use terrain to her advantage, and she began to identify potential solutions that the team's official tactical planning had missed. The weight of her equipment pack, once a symbol of her marginalized status, now represented strategic resources that could prove decisive. Medical supplies, communications equipment, and climbing gear all had potential tactical applications that her teammates hadn't considered. She began to mentally inventory her resources, planning for contingencies that went far beyond her official support role by 0830 hours. The situation had reached a critical threshold. Ammunition was running low, and the enemy sniper had begun to adjust his fire pattern, suggesting either improved intelligence on their positions or the arrival of additional support. Muller's team was facing the very real possibility of being overrun or forced to surrender outcomes that would have catastrophic implications for NATO operations in the region. The psychological pressure was taking its toll on team morale. Weber, shaken by his near miss, was beginning to panic. Other team members were showing signs of combat stress, their tactical discipline deteriorating under the sustained pressure of professional enemy fire. Clara recognized the symptoms from her own combat experience, the moment when training begins to break down and survival instincts take over. Weather conditions were also deteriorating, with cloud cover reducing visibility and wind patterns becoming more unpredictable. The tactical situation that had seemed manageable in clear morning conditions was becoming increasingly complex as environmental factors added new variables to an already desperate equation. And then everything began to unravel as the enemy sniper made his fatal mistake at 0847 hours. The enemy sniper shifted position for what appeared to be a finishing shot. Muller's desperate radio calls had revealed their ammunition status, and the enemy marksman was preparing to exploit their vulnerability. The sniper's movement exposed him for the first time since the engagement began a brief window of opportunity that would last perhaps 30 seconds before he reached his new firing position. Muller saw the movement through his binoculars and realized their situation had become hopeless. The enemy sniper was repositioning to a location that would eliminate their remaining cover entirely. Within minutes, the patrol would be completely exposed, facing systematic elimination by a professional marksman operating from an impregnable position. The team's training had prepared them for many scenarios, but not for this level of tactical disadvantage against a skilled opponent. The psychological impact of imminent defeat was devastating. These were experienced soldiers who had trained for years to handle combat situations, but they found themselves outmatched by an enemy who had turned their own tactical doctrine against them. The narrow canyon that should have provided concealment had become a trap, and their standard operating procedures were proving inadequate against unconventional threats. Clara watched the enemy sniper's movement with professional interest, her trained eye automatically calculating the tactical geometry of the situation. Range approximately 800 meters. Elevation difference roughly 200 meters. Wind conditions variable but manageable. Target exposure time limited but sufficient for a skilled marksman. The shot was difficult but not impossible for someone with the right training and equipment. Her teammates' desperation was palpable, but Clara felt the familiar calm that had characterized her best combat performances. This was the moment her entire career had prepared her for not the bureaucratic discharge, not the demeaning treatment as a supply carrier, but this specific convergence of circumstances that required her unique combination of skills and experience. The decision crystallized in her mind with startling clarity. She could maintain her cover, follow orders, and watch her teammates die, or she could reveal her true capabilities and attempt a shot that would either save them all or confirm her failure. The risk was enormous. Missing would expose her position and likely result in her own death. But the alternative was certain defeat for the entire patrol. Clara's hand moved to her Glock 17 with practiced precision, her muscle memory overriding months of enforced passivity. The weapon felt familiar in her grip, not the specialized sniper rifle she'd prefer, but a tool she'd trained with extensively at extreme ranges. Her Austrian Special Forces training had included unconventional marksmanship scenarios, preparing snipers to engage targets with whatever weapons were available. She began her shooting sequence with mechanical precision, controlling her breathing and heart rate while calculating the complex ballistics required for an 800-meter pistol shot. The mathematical equations were second nature: bullet drop, wind drift, target movement patterns, and the dozens of variables that separated possible from impossible in extreme range shooting. The weight of her decision settled over her like a familiar cloak. This shot would end her anonymity forever, revealing capabilities that she kept hidden for months. But her teammates' lives hung in the balance, and her oath as a soldier demanded action, regardless of personal consequences. She settled into her shooting position, drawing on years of training and combat experience to attempt what most marksmen would consider impossible. This was the moment when everything depended on a single decision, a single shot, and the skills of a woman they dismissed as nothing more than a pack mule. Clara's movements were deliberate and economical as she prepared for the shot that would define the engagement. She shifted her position slightly, using the supply packs as a stable shooting platform while maintaining concealment from the enemy sniper's field of view. Her breathing settled into the controlled rhythm she'd perfected through thousands of hours of training. 4 counts in, hold for 6, 4 counts out. The Glock 17 in her hands represented a significant challenge, even for an expert marksman. Standard military sidearms aren't designed for extreme-range precision shooting, but Clara's training had included scenarios where conventional sniper rifles weren't available. She'd practiced these shots extensively, understanding the weapon's limitations while maximizing its potential through perfect technique and environmental awareness. Mental calculations flowed through her consciousness with practiced ease. The 9mm round would drop approximately 180 inches at 800 meters, requiring significant elevation adjustment. Wind conditions showed a crosswind of roughly 8 mills from the northwest, necessitating a lead of approximately 24 inches. The target's movement pattern suggested a brief window of opportunity as he settled into his new firing position. The enemy sniper was almost in position, his rifle barrel beginning to track toward Muller's exposed position. Clara could see through her peripheral vision that her teammates were preparing for what they believed would be their final moments. Weber was clutching his rifle with white knuckles, while Muller continued his desperate radio calls for support that wouldn't arrive in time. Time seemed to slow as Clara's training took over completely. Her world narrowed to the essential elements: target, weapon, environment, and the precise moment when all variables would align for a successful shot. The psychological pressure that had been building throughout the engagement crystallized into pure focus, eliminating everything except the immediate tactical problem. The enemy sniper's rifle was settling into position, his scope tracking across the canyon toward her trapped teammates. Clara estimated she had perhaps 15 seconds before he would fire the shot that would begin their systematic elimination. Her finger found the trigger, applying the steady pressure that her training had made instinctive. The shot sequence began with Clara's final breath control, her heart rate dropping to the steady rhythm that characterized her best marksmanship performances. She aligned her sights with mathematical precision, accounting for the extreme range and challenging environmental conditions. The Glock's trigger broke cleanly at exactly 0847 hours. The muzzle flash barely visible in the morning light. The 9mm round began its impossible journey across 800 meters of alpine air, following a trajectory that defied conventional expectations for pistol ammunition. Clara's calculations proved accurate as the bullet maintained its path through variable wind conditions, losing velocity but retaining sufficient energy for terminal effectiveness. The flight time of approximately 1.2 seconds felt like an eternity. But the shot's trajectory wasn't perfect. A slight miscalculation in wind drift caused the round to impact 6 inches left of Clara's intended point of aim. For a split second, it appeared the shot had missed entirely, and Clara prepared for the enemy sniper's inevitable response. Her position would be compromised, and her teammates would face even greater danger. Then the impossible happened. The enemy sniper's movement at the moment of impact caused him to shift directly into the bullet's path. What should have been a near miss became a perfect headshot. The 9mm round striking with devastating precision. The enemy marksman slumped forward, his rifle clattering down the rocky slope as his threat was eliminated permanently. Muller's binoculars confirmed what seemed impossible. The enemy sniper was down, killed by a single pistol shot at a range that challenged the limits of conventional marksmanship. The canyon fell silent, except for the echoing report of Clara's weapon, the acoustic signature bouncing off rock walls like a declaration of victory. Clara calmly holstered her weapon and adjusted her pack straps, her demeanor unchanged despite having just executed one of the most remarkable shots in military history. Her teammates stared in stunned disbelief, trying to process what they'd witnessed. The woman they'd called Pack Mule had just saved their lives with a display of marksmanship that would become legendary. The immediate tactical situation transformed completely with the enemy sniper's elimination. Muller's team could move freely for the first time in 3 hours, but their focus remained fixed on Clara's incredible shot. Weber was the first to speak, his voice filled with awe and confusion. "How the hell did you do that? That's impossible with a pistol." Clara's response was characteristically understated. Austrian Special Forces, Alpine Sniper Division, 2015-2019, discharged after budget cuts. Figured you might need someone who could actually shoot if things went bad. The revelation hit the team like a physical blow, forcing them to confront the reality of how badly they'd misjudged their most valuable asset. Muller immediately began radio procedures to report the engagement's conclusion, but his voice carried a new tone of respect and bewilderment. His tactical report would need to explain how his support personnel had eliminated a threat that his entire team couldn't counter. The bureaucratic implications were staggering. How do you document that your most effective soldier was officially classified as a supply carrier? But the story was far from over, and the ripple effects of Clara's shot would transform military doctrine itself. Muller's after-action report created immediate shockwaves through Austrian military command. The revelation that a discharged Special Forces sniper had been operating in a support role while her skills remained unrecognized represented a massive failure in personnel management. Within 48 hours, Clara received orders for immediate reinstatement to combat status, with a promotion to sergeant and assignment as Mountain Patrol Unit 7's designated marksman. The bureaucratic response was swift and comprehensive. Weber, humiliated by his treatment of a superior soldier, requested immediate transfer to another unit. The other patrol members who had mocked Clara now sought her tactical advice on every aspect of mountain warfare, their previous condescension replaced by genuine respect for her expertise. Military investigators launched a comprehensive review of personnel policies, seeking to identify how many other discharged specialists might be serving in roles that failed to utilize their capabilities. Clara's case became a catalyst for broader reforms in military human resources management, highlighting the need for better integration of experienced personnel regardless of their current assignment status. Clara's 800-meter pistol shot became the foundation for new training protocols throughout NATO mountain warfare units. Her techniques for extreme-range shooting with unconventional weapons were incorporated into advanced marksmanship curricula, and her approach to integrating support personnel into combat operations became standard doctrine. The Austrian Alpine Training Center established the Weiss Protocol, requiring all units to conduct comprehensive skills assessments of support personnel to identify hidden capabilities that could prove tactically valuable. This policy change led to the discovery of numerous specialists whose talents had been overlooked by traditional assignment procedures. International military observers studied Clara's case as an example of how institutional bias could create dangerous operational vulnerabilities. Her story became required reading in leadership courses, illustrating the importance of recognizing and utilizing all available resources regardless of official job classifications. Today, Clara Weiss serves as chief instructor at the Austrian Alpine Training Center, where she trains the next generation of mountain warfare specialists. Her teaching emphasizes the principle that every team member possesses potential value beyond their assigned role, and that effective leadership requires the ability to identify and develop these hidden capabilities. The men who once called her Pack Mule now refer to her as Mountain Ghost, acknowledging both her exceptional skills and her ability to operate effectively while remaining underestimated by opponents. Her legend has grown beyond the Austrian military, inspiring similar personnel policy reforms throughout NATO forces. A bronze plaque in the Austrian Alpine Training Center's main hall bears Clara's words, "Judge not the pack carrier, for she may be the sniper who saves your life." Respect every soldier's contribution. You never know what skills they're hiding beneath their humble service. The lesson resonates far beyond military applications, reminding leaders in every field that their most valuable assets might be the people they've overlooked, dismissed, or underestimated. Sometimes the most dangerous person on your team is indeed the one carrying the medical supplies.